My people, the time has come to unite. We must face the trials ahead with courage.
The Israelites had seen wonders. They had watched the sea split like paper, water walls trembling on either side. They had seen manna fall like snow in the desert. They had felt the ground quake when God spoke. And yet, the pull of Baal came creeping anyway, like a shadow they couldn't shake. Why? Because Baal promised something different. He was not distant. He was tangible. The God of storms, the God of rain, the God who could make the fields green again. Where the God of Israel asked for obedience, patience, and faith, Baal demanded only attention, fire, noise, and offerings. Immediate results. Crops. Rain. Life. So the people wavered. They would raise their hands to Yahweh one day, kneel before Baal the next. The priests of Baal whispered in marketplaces, on hillsides, in the fields. And when the drought came, or even the hint of it, the familiar panic surged back, and the people ran to the altar that seemed to promise quick answers. Even after miracles, even after God himself showed power that bent seas and hardened hearts, the lure of Baal never faded. Fear, desire, and survival pulled them back like tides. The question was never whether God was powerful. It was whether the people could resist a God who seemed to live in the storm itself. The wind tore across the cracked hills, carrying the sharp tang of dust and desperation. A woman staggered through the dry field, hands outstretched, the hem of her robe whipping around her ankles. Her children clung to her skirts, eyes wide and blinking, staring at a sky that offered nothing. Not a single cloud. Not a drop of rain. The soil beneath them cracked open, like a mirror reflecting the emptiness above. A man fell to his knees near a rough stone altar, voice hoarse, shaking, calling into the emptiness. Baal! Hear us! Bring water! Make the land bloom! The carved idol stared back, unmoving, silent. Around him, other farmers shouted, voices raised, pleading. Then a hush. The wind swallowed their prayers. Only dust danced across the broken earth. A boy tugged at his mother's cloak. Why isn't he answering? She turned her face, pressing lips tight against the worry she refused to name. Maybe, we've done something wrong. From the edge of the cliff, a figure stepped out of the shadows. His robe was simple, hair wild, eyes gleaming with calm that cut sharper than any blade. The crowd stiffened. Whispers ran like sparks through dry grass. You've been calling the wrong God all along, he said. The words didn't shout. They slid across the ears and settled, heavy. The crowd froze. Mothers clutched children. Farmers pressed hands to dirt-streaked faces. A question rose, silent but thundering, who is Baal, and why can't Israel leave him alone? The Israelites had seen wonders. They had walked through the sea, walls of water trembling on either side, feeling the spray cool their faces and the wind slice through the air. They had tasted manna, white and soft, like snowflakes in their hands. They had felt the ground quake when God spoke, heard the thunder roll across deserts and mountains, and still, when the sky darkened or the fields cracked, they wavered. Because Baal promised something that felt immediate. Where the God of Israel asked for patience, obedience, and faith, Baal demanded only attention. Fire. Noise. Offerings. Smoke curling into the sky, a tangible contract with the God who could make the rain fall, make the crops grow, make the world turn in their favor. And the people, hungry, tired, desperate, were human. They turned. They fell. They knelt before Yahweh one day, before Baal the next. Farmers whispered his name as they plowed. Children carried small charms in their pockets. Even the priests of Yahweh shook their heads in despair. The temples to Baal were everywhere, high on hills where the wind could carry their smoke across valleys. Carved stone idols with arms raised, faces frozen in eternal command. Candles flickered, and incense curled like snakes in the morning sun. The priests moved through the crowd with smooth, easy steps, voices rich and soft, coaxing, praising, promising. A harvest if the rituals were done right. Fertility. Life. Survival. And the people listened, again and again, as if their very bones remembered fear. Even the kings couldn't resist. When the Israelites entered the land of Canaan, the soil was rich, the cities were many, and the people were numerous. And the kings, who were supposed to lead by example, often fell to the same temptation. A king would see his city's walls crumble in a drought. He would see the cattle thin and the riverbeds dry. And a priest would whisper, "Baal will answer. Just give him attention." The people would look at one another. Would they dare resist? Could they resist? Fear bent them. Desire swayed them. They wanted God's miracles, yes. But they also wanted crops this season. Rain now. Life now. And Baal seemed to promise exactly that. A young girl ran to the edge of the dry riverbed, bare feet kicking up dust, her arms full of scraps of grain. "Mother! Mother!" The wheat, she held it up. Brown, shriveled. "It's dead." Her mother grabbed the girl, shaking her head, pressing the grain to her chest like a shield. "It's not dead, we didn't," she trailed off, staring at the horizon, the long, empty line of hills where smoke from Baal's altars still curled. From the shadows of a nearby grove, Elijah watched. His hands folded over a long staff, knuckles white, jaw tight. He had heard this same wailing every day, felt the fear in every hurried step, every whispered prayer to a God that could not answer. And he knew, as surely as he breathed, that the people were standing on the edge of disaster. Not just famine, not just dry fields, but a spiritual disaster that would follow them for generations. He stepped forward. Dust swirled around his sandals. "Stop calling his name," he said quietly, almost to himself, almost too soft to hear. Then louder. "Stop. You've been calling the wrong God." The crowd turned. A murmur ran through the people, hesitant, uncertain. Some scowled. Others blinked. Children clutched the skirts of their parents. Farmers pressed their hands to their foreheads, shielding their eyes from the sun. "Who are you?" someone shouted. "I am Elijah," he said, voice cutting through the dry wind. "And you've been worshipping a lie." Some laughed. Nervous. Some spat on the ground. Others whispered behind cupped hands, "He's mad." But others, eyes wide, leaned in. A spark of recognition, or maybe just relief, passed through them. Because even though the fields were dead and the sky empty, they remembered the God who parted seas, who brought manna from the sky, who had walked beside their ancestors. The priests of Baal appeared then, moving through the crowd like shadows. Smooth voices, promises dripping like honey. Baal is strong. Baal brings life. Follow him, and your flocks will multiply, your crops will grow, your children will eat. One man stepped forward, a priest with a carved staff. "And who are you to challenge him?" Elijah's eyes didn't move. "I am a servant of the living God. He calls the rain, he parts the waters, he brings life where there is death. And soon, you will see who is truly powerful." The priest laughed. It wasn't loud. It was a slow, knowing sound, like someone who had waited years to see a fool try to fight something bigger than himself. "We will see," he said. And he waved a hand, calling the crowd back to the altars. Candles flickered. Smoke twisted. Incense stung the dry air. The people shifted uncomfortably. Some looked at the idols, stone faces frozen in expectation. Some looked at Elijah, calm, almost invisible in the heat and dust. Some, finally, looked to the sky. And still, the sky held nothing. A boy, no more than 10, tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mother, why isn't the sky answering?" She pressed his head to her chest. sometimes, people forget who to call. Her voice was thin, brittle. Sometimes they call the God who can't help them. Elijah knelt beside them, staff digging into the dirt. "You'll see soon," he said softly. "You will see." And then he rose, tall, unyielding. His eyes scanned the dry hills. Farmers bent over the fields, watching. Children clutched at skirts. Priests of Baal whispered in the wind. And somewhere in the distance, a drum beat, a rhythm of ceremony that promised life, that promised answers, that promised everything and delivered nothing. Elijah let the sound wash over him, calm. He stepped forward, closer to the crowd, closer to the altars. He felt the heat of the sun on his back, the weight of the expectation pressing into his shoulders. And he whispered, almost to himself, "This ends today. You will see who answers, and who does not." The people held their breath. The wind shifted, sweeping across the valley, ruffling robes and skirts, lifting dust in lazy swirls. Somewhere, a dog barked. A child cried. The earth, cracked and dry, waited. And in that waiting, the tension twisted tighter, like a rope pulled over a cliff's edge. Because everyone knew the truth, even if they didn't name it aloud, miracles had come before. Water had parted. Bread had fallen. Fire had come from heaven. And yet, every time the people thought they understood, every time they felt safe in their God, fear and survival pulled them back toward another altar, another promise, another lie. Elijah looked at the crowd, then at the priests, then at the cracked earth. "You've been calling the wrong God all along," he said again, voice low and sharp, a whisper that carried further than the priest's laughter. "And now, you will see." The wind shifted again, carrying dust across the cracked hills. Elijah's eyes never left the altars, never left the priests, never left the crowd that teetered between fear and hope. The tension was a living thing, twisting around their hearts, wrapping the valley in silence. And you, watching now, leaning in over your screen, don't look away. Every moment counts. Every glance, every prayer, every heartbeat matters. Because what's about to happen isn't just history. It's fire. It's judgment. It's a showdown that will echo through generations. Stay with us. See who answers. See who falls. See why the people of Israel could never truly leave Baal behind. The smoke from the altars curled into the sky, twisting like snakes in the sun, and the priests moved among the people like shadows with teeth. They whispered in low, soft voices, brushing shoulders with farmers bent under the sun, slipping promises between calloused fingers. "Baal sees you," one said, bowing low over a basket of shriveled wheat. "Baal will answer if you honor him rightly." A woman nodded, her hands trembling as she offered a small bronze idol. She wasn't sure if it would work. She just knew she couldn't wait for the rains that never came. Her eyes flicked toward the horizon, toward Elijah standing on the ridge like a stone sentinel. He didn't shout. He didn't plead. He just watched, unblinking, letting the silence do its work. In the fields, a young man flung a clump of dry earth into the wind. "I can't wait anymore," he muttered. "The crops, the cattle, we need him." He raised his hands to the stone altar, voice cracking. "Baal, hear me. Bring water. Bring life." A priest stepped forward, hands lifted. "You see. You call to him, and he listens." His smile was smooth, polished, and practiced. "Baal is strong. He brings fertility. He brings harvest. He is here." Elijah's eyes narrowed. "Is he?" he said, voice low, cutting the air like a knife. The crowd turned, half in shock, half in disbelief. Some dared a glance at the tall figure on the ridge, robe flapping in the dry wind. Some looked at the cracked fields, at the brown wheat, at the empty riverbeds. "Where is the water?" a boy shouted, pounding a small fist into the dirt. "Where is the rain?" The priest faltered, "Just a moment. His smile twitched. Perhaps he tests you. Tests your devotion. The boy's eyes went wide, disbelief battling fear. Tests. We're starving. We're dying. And you say he tests us? Mothers pulled their children back, pressing them to their chests, murmuring words that sounded like prayers, but were really pleas. Fathers shook their heads, shoulders slumped, hands pressed against the earth like they were trying to squeeze life from it. And everywhere, the altars glowed faintly, flames licking the stone idols, casting shadows that danced like mocking spirits. Smoke filled their nostrils, stung their eyes, and for a moment, the people believed. They wanted to believe. Survival is a powerful god, more insistent than any stone or idol. King Ahab sat in his palace, robe loose, crown tilted, fingers tapping impatiently against the armrest. The room smelled of incense, wine, and fear. His eyes scanned the council chamber, landing on Jezebel, seated like a queen of shadows, black hair cascading, lips pressed tight in a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You see it, don't you?" she said, leaning forward, voice smooth as silk. "The people want Baal. They whisper his name at the market. They kneel at his altars. They fear him." Ahab scowled. "Fear him?" His voice was rough, tired. "They should fear me." Jezebel's eyes glittered. "And they do. But fear isn't enough. They need reassurance. They need the promise of life. You cannot give them rain. Baal can." Ahab ran a hand through his hair. "I am king. Am I not supposed to protect them? Feed them? Bring water to the fields?" She laughed softly, a sound that slipped like smoke around the room. "You are king. You rule cities. You enforce laws. But you cannot make the earth yield what it refuses. Only he can. Baal." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows twist like serpents across the carved beams. Somewhere, he knew she was right. He had seen it, the people bowing, the altars glowing, the priests moving like predators through the market, whispering promises that his armies and laws could never fulfill. In the town square, merchants moved quickly, brushing past one another, exchanging whispers and coins. "Did you hear? Another altar was built on the western hill. Baal will answer this time. He must." Farmers bent low, scattering grain into baskets, murmuring prayers, lips moving almost silently. Children followed, carrying clay charms and little statues, small things to make Baal smile. Elijah walked among them, silent, eyes scanning, staff in hand. He didn't raise his voice, didn't beg. He let the murmurs and prayers come to him, and he let the tension grow. He saw the hunger. He saw the fear. He saw the longing in their eyes, that desperate, human longing for something tangible, something immediate. "Why don't you answer?" a farmer shouted suddenly, voice cracking. "Why not him? He is supposed to help." Elijah knelt, digging his staff into the cracked earth. He didn't flinch under the shouting. He didn't raise his voice. "Because you've been calling the wrong God," he said, calm. "The one you've been whispering to, offering to, fearing, praying to, cannot answer. Only the living God hears." The crowd stiffened. Some laughed nervously, some spat. Some lowered their heads. A woman pressed her fingers to her lips, shaking slightly. Children huddled closer to their mothers. Even the priests paused, unsure how to respond. Night fell like a blanket over the valley. Candles flickered in windows. Smoke curled lazily from the altars, carrying promises into the darkness. And yet the sky was empty. Not a single drop of rain. The riverbeds remained dry. Crops browned further, cattle thinned, the air hummed with the tension of waiting. In the palace, Ahab tossed on his bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the distant chanting and the soft murmur of the priests. Jezebel sat in the corner, leaning against the wall, eyes gleaming. You cannot fight this, she said softly. They will not leave him. You cannot give them what he promises. Ahab gritted his teeth. I am king. Should I not command loyalty? You command obedience, she said, voice low and knowing. But they will follow what feeds them. What protects them? What promises life when you cannot? Elijah walked to the edge of the cliff, looking down at the valley stretched below. He saw the priests moving among the people, saw the smoke, the candles, the shadows that danced like living things. He felt the weight of the land, dry and cracked, felt the fear and longing pressing against the people like a tide. And yet he did not despair. Not yet. He raised his staff, letting it rest lightly against his shoulder. Soon, he muttered, voice low. Soon they will see. They will see who answers, and who does not. In a nearby village, a child tugged at her mother's sleeve. Will he hear us? Will he help? Her mother pressed her cheek to the girl's head, eyes distant, voice quiet. He hears. He always hears. But sometimes, people forget. A man nearby spat into the dirt. Forget, he growled. We remember. We remember hunger. We remember thirst. And we call to Baal. Elijah did not turn. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, on the faint line where the hills met sky. And yet, he whispered, even when you call him, he does not answer. The priest nearest him laughed softly, a sound that carried over the dry air. You are a fool, he said, voice smooth. You defy the God who brings life. We will see who is right soon enough. Elijah smiled faintly, a curve of lips that hinted at fire beneath calm. Oh, he said, voice quiet but carrying, you will see. The wind picked up, carrying dust and the smell of smoke through the valley. The people looked to the sky, to the altars, to the priests, to Elijah. And somewhere deep inside, in the twisting of fear and hope, they knew the question lingered, which God will answer when the earth cries. And the night held its breath. The first light of dawn bled across the hills, pale and sharp. Smoke still lingered from the altars, curling like lazy snakes in the crisp air. The valley below was quiet, too quiet, as if the land itself waited for what was coming. Farmers stared at the cracked earth, hands on knees, breath misting in the chill. Children pressed close to mothers, eyes wide and blinking, unsure if fear or hope guided them. Elijah stood on the ridge, staff in hand, robe catching the wind. He didn't shout. He didn't raise a hand. He just looked, and somehow the silence stretched, thick and heavy, into the valley. From every hill, the priests of Baal moved like shadows, whispering, calling, lighting fires, waving hands, dancing in ritual, promising life, promising harvest, promising rain. A young boy tugged at his mother's cloak. Why won't he answer? She pressed his head to her chest, eyes brimming, voice tight. Because, sometimes people call the wrong God. The boy blinked. But, we're starving. We're dying. Doesn't he care? Elijah's eyes softened for just a fraction of a second. He cares, he said. But he does not work through lies. Only truth calls him. Word spread quickly through the towns and villages. Elijah had called the people together. He would challenge the priests of Baal. Some laughed nervously. Some whispered in fear. Some ran, unsure if they dared to watch. The men and women who had bowed to Baal for years felt a stirring in their bones, curiosity tangled with panic. King Ahab heard the news in his palace. He frowned at Jezebel, who sat leaning back, arms crossed, the hint of a smile on her lips. Do you think he dares? Jezebel's eyes glinted. He must, she said. And when he does, they will see who truly has power. Or so he thinks. Ahab spat onto the floor. Power. Life. He is a man. Just one man. And he dares to challenge 450 priests of Baal. She shrugged, unconcerned. Then let him. He will fail. Or perhaps, he will remind everyone why you built the altars in the first place. The crowd assembled at the base of Mount Carmel. Smoke rose from altars, curling into the morning light. 450 priests of Baal, robes flowing, voices raised in ritual, moving in unison like a single body, chanting, calling, begging their God to show himself. The valley vibrated with the sound, low and insistent, a drumbeat of promise and threat. Elijah walked slowly to the center, staff tapping against the stone. He didn't shout. He didn't wave. He merely looked around, scanning faces, seeing desperation, fear, hope, doubt all tangled together. Enough, he said. His voice cut through the murmur like steel. You call and call, but there is no answer. Perhaps your God is asleep. Perhaps he has abandoned you. Perhaps he never existed at all. A priest of Baal stepped forward, chest puffed out, staff raised. And who are you to speak against him? I am Elijah, he said. Calm, unshakable. And I serve the living God. He calls the rain, he parts the waters, he brings life. And today, you will see who answers and who does not. The priests laughed, soft at first, then louder. You. One man against 450. You are a fool. Elijah smiled faintly, almost darkly. Perhaps. But fools sometimes see what the wise cannot. The priests began their ritual again, voices rising, stamping feet, dancing around the altars, cutting themselves in frantic devotion. They cried to Baal, screamed, and shouted. Sweat ran down foreheads, and the smell of blood mixed with incense filled the air. The people watched, rapt and terrified. The hills seemed alive with sound and smoke, a living pulse that demanded belief. Hours passed. The sun climbed, burning hot. Still, the altars were silent. Still, the sky offered nothing. The crowd shifted, uncertain. Whispers crept through them like wine through dead leaves. Is he asleep? Does he care? Perhaps we've angered him. Elijah knelt by his own altar, gathering stones with deliberate care. He poured water over them, soaking the wood and the sacrifice until it glistened in the sun, dripping into the dirt, turning dust into mud. The people blinked. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Why? He did not answer. He merely placed the offering on the stones, lifted his hands, and looked to the sky. Lord, he whispered, voice low but carrying, let them see. Let them know. Let the truth fall here, on this dry earth, before the eyes of all. A hush fell. The priests of Baal shouted louder, stamped harder, bled deeper. The sun climbed higher. Their movements grew frantic, almost desperate, the rhythm of ritual turning jagged. The people began to shift uneasily. Even the bravest faltered, unsure if they were watching magic, faith, or madness. And then it happened. A flicker of flame, small at first, licked at the altar Elijah had built. The wind caught it, and the flame jumped higher, brighter, consuming the soaked wood. Smoke curled straight into the sky. The crowd gasped. The priests froze mid-step. Their mouths opened, but no sound came. Elijah stood, hands raised slightly, eyes calm, as the fire roared, consuming the offering, the stones, the wood, leaving only ashes and heat. The smell of smoke filled the valley, sweet and sharp, a scent that cut through fear like a knife. The people fell to their knees, some shielding their eyes, some pressing their hands to their mouths, some laughing in disbelief. Children clutched mothers, mothers clutched children, farmers sank into the dust, shaking. The fire demanded attention, a living proof, undeniable. The priests of Baal screamed, shouted, and wept. They ran around the altars, striking themselves harder, but the fire did not falter, did not waver, did not answer their frantic cries. Elijah's voice rang out, calm and steady. You have called, you have begged, you have shouted. And still, there is no answer. Only lies. Only smoke. Only silence. A man, older, hands shaking, whispered to his neighbor, "All these years, we followed, we prayed, and nothing." His neighbor pressed a hand to his shoulder. "And now we see, the God of Israel," he trailed off, eyes wide. Elijah's eyes scanned the crowd, seeing the shock, the awe, the dawning comprehension. "This is your choice," he said softly. "You can turn from lies, or return to them. But know this, the living God speaks. The false gods are silent." The priests of Baal sank to the ground, mouths open, eyes wide, beaten by the proof they could not deny. Some covered faces, some fell to their knees, some fled. The people began to gather around Elijah, whispering, trembling, but no longer shouting to the stone idols. The sun beat down, drying the sweat, drying the tears, warming the dust. Silence stretched across the valley like a living thing, heavy and thick. And in that silence, the people realized the truth: miracles had come before, and now, here they were again, undeniable. Night began to creep over the hills, soft and cool. The fires had burned down, smoke drifting lazily. Elijah walked slowly among the people, staff tapping the stones, eyes calm, robe brushing the dust. Children followed, peering at the burned altars, at the priests cowering or gone, at the stunned crowd, and at the man who had brought fire from the sky. A boy tugged at his mother's sleeve. "Mother, will he come again? Will the God of Israel send rain?" She pressed his head to her chest, eyes on Elijah, voice low, trembling with awe. "Yes. Yes, he will. He always hears." Elijah looked up to the horizon, to the distant hills, the cracked earth, the fields that would drink water again, and the people who would follow the truth if they dared. His lips curved faintly. "Soon," he whispered. "Soon you will see fully." The wind shifted, carrying the scent of smoke and ash, of sweat and hope. The valley was quiet now, trembling in the aftermath, alive with a new rhythm, one of awe and fear and trembling belief. The priests of Baal were gone. The idols stood silent. And the people, finally, looked to the living God. The struggle was not over. Not by a long shot. The pull of Baal, the temptation, the fear, the desire for instant survival, it lingered. But a line had been drawn. The people had seen. They had felt. They had witnessed what power truly looked like. And somewhere in the hills, Elijah watched, knowing this was only the beginning. The challenge, the test, the long struggle, this was far from over. The night settled over the valley like a shroud, stars blinking into view, wind whispering across cracked soil, and the people slept, uneasy but enlightened, waiting for the rain, waiting for the next proof of God's living presence. The fire burned down, leaving blackened stones and the scent of smoke hanging in the valley. Dawn had turned to morning, yet the sun did not feel brighter, the fields were still cracked, the riverbeds still empty, and the people still trembling from what they had seen. Some dropped to their knees, eyes wide, hands pressed to dust-streaked faces. Others simply stared, unsure if they had witnessed a miracle or a dream too vivid to be real. Elijah stood in the center of the valley, staff pressed lightly against the earth, robe brushing the dust. He did not smile. Not truly. There was work to be done. Hearts were changed, yes, but only for a moment. Desire, fear, and survival could bend the strongest will. He had won today, but the war, the quiet, persistent struggle, was far from over. From the edge of the crowd, a farmer's wife whispered to her husband. "Do you see the fire?" it answered. The husband shook his head, voice low. "Yes. But it will not be enough. The old ways, the fear, it is still here." Children clutched at skirts, pointing at the blackened altars. "Did he go to sleep?" one asked. "Is he angry?" Elijah's gaze softened. "No," he said. He watches. Always. But he works through truth, not through lies. Baal has no power here. Only the living God answers. Even in victory, the pull of Baal lingered. The priests returned, quieter now, faces pale but determined. They whispered in corners, promising quick crops, easy blessings, life without patience. They rebuilt altars on hills where no one might notice, scattered charms in marketplaces, and murmured promises in homes. Fear was a persistent god. Desire, even more. King Ahab paced in his palace, crown tilting, robe loose. Jezebel leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smile thin and calculating. So he wins today, she said. But the people, they are fickle. They will return to Baal, as always. Ahab's hand fell to the armrest. He has shown power. He has shown fire. But only for a moment, Jezebel replied, voice soft and deadly. The fields dry again, the riverbeds crack, the famine returns, and then they will forget the fire. They will bow again. And you? You built the altars for them to remember, yes? For safety, for survival. Baal's pull is strong. Do not think it's gone. Elijah walked along the ridge as the sun rose higher. He saw the people gathering water from distant wells, hauling buckets to dry fields, tending what little green stubbornly survived. He saw mothers teaching children prayers he had given them, fathers whispering truth in marketplaces. And still, he knew, the temptation was everywhere, lurking, waiting. A young boy ran to him, eyes bright. Will he help us again? Elijah knelt, brushing dust from the child's shoulder. Yes, he said. But only if you call to him rightly. Only if you trust what is real, not what is easy. The pull of Baal will not vanish. It will test you every day. But the living God. He answers. The boy nodded, understanding only part, but enough. Elijah placed a hand on his head and rose, scanning the valley below. Shadows from burnt altars stretched long across the cracked earth. Smoke drifted, curling into distant hills. Life would grow again, yes, but the struggle, subtle, invisible, and relentless, would continue. The priests of Baal gathered secretly at night, whispering plans, moving through the dark with fire-lit torches. They rebuilt small altars on hidden hills, buried charms beneath rocks, and continued to murmur promises of immediate results. Fear and desire are stubborn companions, they said. Even the memory of fire would fade. The people needed reassurance, immediate relief, something tangible. And Baal offered that where patience and faith faltered. In villages, whispers ran through marketplaces. The prophet, he is powerful, yes. But what of our crops? What of the rivers? Some stared at cracked earth, lips pressed tight. Others pressed small charms to their chests, shaking slightly. Survival is stronger than belief, stronger than awe, stronger than miracles witnessed with their own eyes. Even after fire from heaven, even after proof, even after Elijah's calm words, hearts still wavered. And somewhere, in quiet corners of the land, Baal's pull grinned silently, knowing that fear and desire are older than mountains. Elijah walked through one village as the sun climbed high, staff tapping lightly against stones, robe trailing behind. Children peeked from doorways, mothers nodded, fathers stepped aside. He did not speak unless spoken to. He did not force belief, only offered guidance, instruction, quiet truth. He stopped at a well, watching water slowly fill a bucket. A farmer's son leaned on the edge, eyes bright with fear and hope tangled together. Will Baal strike us if we forget him? Elijah knelt, fingers brushing water into a small puddle for the boy to touch. No, he said. Baal cannot strike. He never could. He is a promise made of smoke and fear. But the living God. He works through the real. Through the soil, the water, the wind. He works through truth. The boy nodded, understanding only part of it, but enough. And that was enough, for now. By nightfall, Elijah climbed the ridge once more, looking over the valley. Fires from hidden altars flickered in the distance, tiny sparks of defiance and hope alike. The people slept uneasily, dreaming of crops, rivers, rain. And somewhere in those dreams, the pull of Baal tugged gently, a reminder that the struggle is never fully over. Elijah rested his staff against a stone, hands folded lightly. He looked up at the stars, vast and endless above, and whispered, almost to himself, "They will remember. Some will not. But the living God endures, always." The wind shifted again, carrying the smell of ash, of sweat, of soil ready to drink. Somewhere, a dog barked, a child cried, a priest of Baal whispered to himself, convinced of a return. Life would grow, rivers would fill, rains would fall. And yet, as the night deepened, the quiet struggle pressed onward, invisible and relentless. Because the pull of fear, the pull of desire, the pull of survival, is older than fire, older than miracles, older than men. And it will never disappear entirely. Elijah closed his eyes, feeling the tension, the promise, the pulse of the valley beneath him. The people had seen the power of God. They had witnessed fire from heaven. They had felt awe, fear, and trembling belief. And now, they would walk forward, hearts tugged in two directions, toward truth, and toward temptation that never sleeps. The stars blinked above, cold and steady, indifferent witnesses. And somewhere in the distance, a faint light flickered atop a hidden altar. Baal was silent. Yet the struggle would continue, in hearts, in minds, in the everyday choices of the people of Israel. And Elijah, staff in hand, robe brushing the dust, eyes fixed on the horizon, whispered again, "This is only the beginning. The living God endures. The false gods cannot answer. And the people, they must choose, every day, whom to follow." The valley slept uneasily, full of tension, hope, and fear. The echoes of fire lingered, the scent of ash and smoke whispered truths, and the pull of Baal, subtle, persistent, and human, waited patiently for the next call. The story was over for today, but the struggle, eternal, relentless, human, would continue. And somewhere, Elijah smiled faintly, knowing that truth, like fire, endures when lies fade. The valley is quiet now, but the story isn't over. The fire has burned. The idols lie in shadow. And yet, the pull of fear, desire, and survival still whispers in every cracked field, every empty riverbed, every human heart. If you've been watching, leaning in, feeling the heat of the altars, the crackle of fire, the tension in the wind, don't look away. The struggle, the choices, the power of truth versus lies, that is a story that never ends. Subscribe, follow, and join us as we walk through history, uncover forgotten battles, and watch as men and gods collide. See who answers when the world cries. See who endures when all else fails. The story continues, and the next revelation is just a click away. Will you be there to witness it?